Welcome into Bleav in Podcasts, Bleav in Commanders. Scott Jackson and, of course, Anthony Armstrong here with you. And we are brought to you by FanDuel. And our pleasure to bring in right there in the middle covers the Commanders, David Harrison, part of the Locked On Network with Locked On Commanders. Good enough to give us some time, just fresh off OTAs. David, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm good, man. Somebody
Excellent.
about to walk in right when we getting started. Somebody wants to walk in and try to bogart the conversation. Glad to have David here. I'm also work with David on another pod as well, so it's cool to have a little cross promotion going on. But David was out there at OTAs, and neither me nor Scott were able to make it, but David was, and he got to see the new iteration of the Commanders offense, the new iteration of the defense, and Sonny Styles, our own alien of sorts with the Commanders. And my first question to you, man, just what was your first overall take from being there in OTAs? What was it feel like?
It's definitely going to be a different brand of Commanders football. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the biggest thing. But as much as things are going to change, a lot of stuff really still stayed the same. And I've been kind of thinking about this because, you know, in my career covering football teams, I've had the fortunate ability to cover a lot of losing teams. And this goes back to my time covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before Tom Brady. I covered him, during the Tom Brady time as well. But, I've seen a lot of teams coming off of losing records, and there tends to be kind of this vibe. And I don't know if it's really the intention of all the men, that are out there, all the coaches and everything, but there just tends to be kind of a vibe of like, we're here to prove that last year wasn't who we really are, instead of we're here to do good things this year, and the past is the past, right? And of course, I think that's in any competitive market, you always want to look at the past as the past, whether you're the champions or the number one overall pick in the draft. You want to just look at it as the rearview mirror. This group really doesn't feel like it's building off of or trying to fix anything from 2025, even though we do know there's going to be that kind of conversation, Jaden talking about the bad taste in his mouth, things like that. But it really does feel like just a fresh new team. And I don't know if it's like the threads, if it's the schemes, if it's some of the new faces, or if it's just all of it combined. It really does feel like almost a new beginning, even though you do have a lot of familiar faces.
So, David, with what you guys were allowed to see in the limited time, and obviously it's early part of the OTAs, right? So not everything is, guys can't compete for the football, for example. DBs can't come up and, try to knock it away and those kind of things. But right. Did it look drastically different on either side of the ball from what you were able to see?
Yeah, it looks significantly different. Like the offense looks a lot different than what we're used to seeing. The defense looks a lot different than what we're used to seeing. I was telling Anthony before we hit record here, like a lot of the things that we've been kind of talking about, expecting or thinking we were going to see leading up to this period of the offseason are some of the things that we were able to see. And like you said, like the whole playbook is not available. In fact, Dan Quinn talked about telling his new coordinators, like, hey, don't come in here with a whole lot of stuff to work on. Kind of figure out like the main things you really want to hammer home, the main things you really want to get right. And let's start there. Like, let's just kind of make sure, because new coordinators, he said, have a tendency to bring too much into these OTA periods. And he wanted to make sure his two new coordinators didn't do that right off the bat. But just a little bit you got to see. I'd be surprised, honestly, if it's even like 6% of what, the total, what we're going to see. But just a little bit what you see, like stylistically, the feel of it, it definitely looks like a different brand of football. And unfortunately, for those of us who have been trying to kind of guess what it's going to look like, we've been fairly accurate, and that leaves a lot of excitement for the future.
And it also leaves a lot of variety. So don't think that just because you can say, oh, it's this style of offense, that means they're going to do X, Y, and Z. It actually opens up a lot of doors, a lot of different avenues. Being under center is one of the biggest things that changes. I mean, David reported on it. A lot of folks have said it. Like, if you know where everybody's going to start in shotgun, it limits what you can do. If you know Terry's going to always be on the left, it limits what you can do. And I was in a chat earlier, we're just talking about moving players, and like, how is that going to affect things? I'm like, well, just imagine, David Bleav could line up in one look and then shift Terry to another look. And if that defender follows him, now he knows, it's man. Now he motions him back across at full speed. That defender's ran 75 yards. And now he has to cover Terry McLaurin. Those are the type of advantages that you can get when you start adding in shifts and motions and a lot of information. But how do you feel the players are? I mean, obviously it was one day, but how do you think they're taking on that shift from the Kingsbury system to the way David Bleav is doing things.
I think they're all enjoying it. You know what I mean? And like you said, it's been one practice, but, turning it from the classroom, the meeting rooms, and the walkthroughs that they've had during phase 1 and 2, leading up to this phase 3 OTA period, you just kind of tell how excited they were. And I mean, honestly, like Terry McLaurin, for example, Terry is a guy who kind of always tries to keep a smile on his face, even if things aren't going necessarily well. But you could almost tell, and I'd be willing to bet, like, it was one of the most energized I've seen him. Energized departures from the practice, I should say, that I've seen him have in a long, long time. And, of course, there's the added, he wasn't in OTAs last year, so there's that part of it. Him and Jaden are on the field at the same time, which is something we didn't get to see enough of in 2025. But I think also the way that he's being used and the way that the offense being used. You mentioned the shifts, Anthony. I'm glad you brought that up. There was actually one specific play, and I think it's also important for everybody to realize too, like, not you guys, because I know but like any fan out there, like, the defense is also working with a very small package of looks and what they can do, right? So it's very important, but like, because what I'm going to say is going to make the defense sound bad, but just understand, that's what they're working with. It's very limited. There's a look, I can't get too descriptive, unfortunately, but there's a look, and they come out this looking like all the people that I'm standing next to on the sideline, all the other media members were all like, whoa, what is this interesting sexiness that's probably never going to be seen on Madden because it's too outside there. And we look at it, we're like, man, and you can see the defense. The defense is like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I don't know what to do with this. And then they shift into almost more of a traditional type of formation and look. But because of everything that did happen and didn't happen, you still ended up with Chigakonkwo wide open for a big gainer on the play, even though you started off kind of wonky, come in a little bit more traditional, conventional. But then you also know that David Bleav is going to have some sort of design. I don't know what it's going to be, but I look forward to the day that we get to see it in live action, where they come out into that formation and they don't shift, or they shift into that look. And now the defense has got to figure out what they're doing and try to do those things. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and a lot of things where guys are clearing out. I've kind of emphasized the scheme putting defenders into no-win situations. And like, you got to pick, like, which one are you going to give up? You're going to give up the low guy, the high guy, the second level guy, the third level guy. Like, basically tell me which one you want to give me. And as a quarterback, I'm just going to read you and go where you're not, and all the triangulation that comes into it and all those things. So it's, like I said, it's a small sample size, but man, I'll tell you, it was a good small sample size.
Very cool. David Harrison covers Commanders Locked On Commanders podcast. He's with us here in Bleav in Commanders podcast, part of the Bleav Network. Scott Jackson and number 13, Anthony Armstrong, here with you. Yeah, Chig is the guy I'm really excited about. I'm sure you get this, David, all the time on Twitter or when you're talking to fans. And, well, did they do enough for Jade in this offseason? I get it all the time, and a lot of it's based off of who's your two receiver, whatever. And I'm like, look, they got a tight end who has a lot of yak in him after the catch, and a lot of explosiveness. They got a back coming out of the backfield that, bare minimum is your Eckler, right, and Rashad White in terms of being able to catch the ball and run it as well. And, not to mention, like, look, De'Ami Brown played really good football before he left here and got paid by the Jaguars. And they've got chemistry immediately with Jaden. We'll see what Traylon Burks can do as he's getting more opportunities here. And Van Jefferson's a pro. I mean, so I'm not really buying into that. I remember, again, when they went 2 years ago to the championship and shocked the world, we weren't going, oh my God, they don't have a two receiver. Even, they were doing it by committee. So I think in a lot of ways they have helped him. They've helped him on defense. Mm-hmm. They got what it looks to be a younger, better defense. But as you watch this offense, are you like one of these people that like hyper focused on whether it's going to be Ayuk or Stephon Diggs, if that's a real thing or something like that? Or do you think they have enough in the building right now where they could be comfortable playing this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have enough. You know what I mean? Now, at the same time, is it attractive to bring in a Brandon Ayuk, especially, depending on his health and everything else? Potentially, sure. Is it attractive to bring in Stephon Diggs, who just had 1,000 yards with the New England Patriots last year? Absolutely. I get why it's attractive. But I also agree with you. Like, I think that they do have enough. If they need to go into the season with what they have right now, I like it. And the biggest reason I like it, and Anthony, you were talking about options, right, is a lot of times I think this Commanders' number 2 wide receiver is actually going to be the 4th receiver in the progression or in the play. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because you have, like you said, Rashad White, who's a 40-catch guy just coming from last year. By the way, a 40-catch guy in a season where he was, I would say, more than expected, kind of shelved by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, he was kind of minimized in his role. And it wasn't until Bucky Irving missed some time, and then he got a little bit more burned. But once Bucky was back, really kind of got minimized. So it's 40 catches in a year where everybody just kind of knew the writing was on the wall. It's like, this is Shaw's last year. We're kind of making plans to move forward without him, right? So you've got that guy. You've got Chigakonkwo, like you talked about. Terry, of course, is just Terry and all the things they're going to do with him. And then you've got Antonio Williams or De'Ami Brown or Van Jefferson or Luke McCaffrey or Jalen Lane. And like, which of those 5 guys is going to be option number 4 on this look? And, sometimes, of course, obviously there's going to be a difference, and Jaden's going to see the defense, and maybe your 4th look becomes your 1st look because of what you see and all those things. But I think if you look at it through that lens, because I think a lot of people, it's the number 2 receiver. Who's the number 2 receiver? Is it really going to be this 3rd round rookie? You know what I mean? That's where I think the panic sets in a little bit. When you look at it as a lot of the plays that they draw up, that number 2 receiver, quote unquote, is actually going to be the 4th target on the field at times, or the 3rd or the 2nd or whatever it is. But I think that they're good with what they have, always looking to get better. Adam Peters says that all the time. But if they had to roll in with what they do now, I'm not hitting the panic button.
I'm not hitting the panic button either on the receiver room because, frankly, people think they're imagining, 1-2 punch like the Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, the Jamar Chase, and T Higgins, the Puka and Cooper and whomever. They're assuming that you need to have that type of layout, like it's a video game, like it's Madden. Like, hey, I got to have these 2 high 95 overalls, and now I'm better than this other team. No, you can scheme people open, right? And I think the difference between previous iterations of this offense and what you're looking at now is, the first one is more of like, the system runs itself, and then you just throw it to whoever is open, and the ball gets to that person. Now this one here is saying we're going to scheme people open and put them in favorable positions to be successful, right? And like David said, if it's Chigakonkwo, hey, I'm not mad if he goes with 800, 900 yards. That's a beautiful thing. Hell, FanDuel has Antonio Williams and some of his futures. I think he was around 600 yards, so you can look at rookie receivers over there on FanDuel. I think he was around 600. He was like 5th he was a little bit lower on that list, but nonetheless, I think he could probably have higher than that, right? If he gets in some spots because he can take the quick screens, he's got speed to get down the field. And if they're creating some confusion, he's going to slip out the back door somewhere, and Jaden's going to find him. So wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I was listening to some John Keim, and they were throwing around the Terry with 10 targets.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that he mentioned that Jay Gruden said he saw Terry as more of a 6-target guy with 100 yards. That how you see that working out? Because I could see it still getting to 10 targets, but how you see that working out? Just kind of with what little bit that you see.
Everybody knows Terry's the number 1 guy in Washington, right? Like, that's not a secret to anybody. As much as we, do our best to not, divulge too much scheme and all this stuff, like, we can put out there, Terry McLaurin is the number 1 option in the Washington Commanders passing game, and there's not a pro scout in the NFL who just learned something when we said that. So that's safe. I think what's going to happen early on in the season is it's going to basically turn into kind of a prove it type of thing. Now the coaches who have seen Chigakonkwo, right? Like, I don't know the Ravens, history against the Tennessee Titans, but like, if Harbaugh has had a game against the Titans in recent memory where Chig did some damage to his defense, he's probably going to be a little bit more honed in on Chigakonkwo. But if a guy comes in and, like, we haven't really faced Chigakonkwo, we're going to kind of make them prove it. Antonio Williams is going to have to prove it. De'Ami Brown, et cetera, on down the line. The great thing is, if these guys, and that's where the opportunities come in, right? If these guys have the opportunity to step up, and they do that, they step up in those spots, now that's when you really start to force these defenses into being honest. And it doesn't take much time. Philadelphia, right? If Philadelphia comes out and tries to play their Bermuda Triangle defense around Terry McLaurin, I think they got bad news coming to them, because, one, I don't think Terry McLaurin's going to be lined up on the left wide, margin of the field 77% of the time. So that Bermuda Triangle is going to have to shift. And as the Bermuda Triangle shifts, Jaden Daniels' eyes are going to shift to other triangles that don't have Terry McLaurin at the centerpiece of it. And if Antonio Williams can take advantage, Chig gets them, on the seam or on some horizontal routes or something, Rashad comes out of the backfield and gashes them for big yak. That forces the defense to play different, and it forces the eyes to go different places. A safety maybe is like, well, I want to protect this leak out, and then Terry McLaurin suddenly sneaks behind you on a deep post or something like that. Like, all these things that can happen during the course of the game. So we're not talking like a 6-week process, like, oh, well, maybe the San Francisco 49ers will cover more honestly. Like, it just kind of depends on who steps up in the moments. And the great thing you love about Jaden in this first practice, all the talk about the under center stuff, is him taking what the defense gave him. You know what I mean? There wasn't really a lot of forcing the football to a certain guy. You could tell, like, there was a true progression there was a true patience in going through the progression, and there was ability to get to the right guy instead of getting to maybe the biggest guy. So if that translates, further into all these practices and into the season, then that's only going to make this offense even more dangerous.
Bleav in Commanders podcast, Scott Jackson and number 13, Anthony Armstrong. We are joined by David Harrison from Locked On Commanders, part of the Bleav network here, and we are brought to you by FanDuel. All right, I want to spend some time on the defense. I mean, we could do the offense all day. I got so many other things, but we're only in phase, what are we, phase 3 of the OTAs? Is that right? We're in phase 3. So
phase 3.
We've got time to open up all the other stuff for phase 4 and on. But the defense, I know, again, you said it was limited, just like the offense. There's only so many things you could see. But what did jump out? Because I know we heard like they want to be fast, they want to attack the football. Maybe you don't get a really chance to see that in these kind of practices. But what was visible to you that would look different about Durante Jones's defense compared to what we've seen these last few seasons?
Yeah, creating a lot of one-on-ones. That's the first thing that, and again, it's something that we've talked about and expected to see. So it wasn't really a surprise, but it was just great to see it in motion. And something that Charles Omenihu talked about in his podium time after practice was how Durante is getting those one-on-ones specifically for those interior D linemen, but really for anybody that's got their hand in the dirt. And when you do that, obviously you open up lanes for guys like Frankie Louvu, Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal was all over the place in that practice. Absolutely loved getting to see him in action for the first time. Javon Kinlaw was in the backfield a consistent amount of times. And, granted, there's no pads, there's no full force, right? So the offensive linemen can't do their little, tricks and all that kind of stuff that they usually do. So, again, a grain of salt. But the fact that these guys are just getting these one-on-one competitions, Sam Cosmi talked about going up against a defense that really does keep the offense guessing every single down. It's like, hey, where's this coming? I was having fun myself standing on the sideline. You see, 6-7 dudes lined up on the line of scrimmage or standing over the line of scrimmage. And I'm like, I think this guy and this guy are going to drop. And, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're not right. And that's the joy of it because, of course, if I was right every time, we would have a problem. So I'm definitely happy I wasn't right every time. But it was a lot of fun to watch, a lot of chaos. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how opposing quarterbacks take advantage of it, not take advantage of it, but respond to it, because Mikey Sanderson already talked about as well, about how in their drops, they're really focusing on shutting down some of those lanes, really tightening those throwing windows for opposing quarterbacks, so that if the defensive front can't get home quickly, they give them enough time to get home if they need it. So everything is definitely moving, front to back to front, trying to help each other out.
The one thing I loved hearing from Mikey on the defense was having to know everything. And that's the requirement for everybody. Like, you can't just be like, I only rush from the right side. Like, no. That's not how this works. No. I need you to be able to move and be in various positions. And frankly, you'll see some good football players that are not on this team because of that. I don't know who, but there's always somebody who's like, man, like, I only play this technique. And he's asking me to play this technique, but it's like, it's to help you and to help everybody else get home and create more havoc. Because frankly, like, getting up under center, like, number one, that's going to be imposing because you're standing there and then it's just 6'5", 6'6". All these huge individuals, you got to pick which one is going to be the mic. And that's going to be a great communication between Allegretti or Golden, whoever ends up being the center, and Jaden. They got to talk about who's going to be the mic. All right, hey, let's get this. The center has, number one, communicate, say, hey, no, I don't, let's go to him. Let's do this because this is going to change our protection here. We can slide this way. We can get the back this way. I used to get more excited about watching them break down the offensive line, how they're going to pick up blitzes, than I did installing pass plays. Because, I mean, frankly, the pass plays are what they are. The ball goes to one person. But when there's all this magic and this mixing happening up front, I can't catch the ball if my quarterback's on his back. All right. Yeah. So knowing everything, how does the versatility, especially in the secondary, how do you see that working out? I mean, we mentioned that they need to add players there, but how do you see that versatility really kind of being a strong suit for the secondary?
I think the secondary is getting a lot of really good opportunities. There's some stuff I can't say, unfortunately, like specifically, but there were some things that Durante Jones was doing with the secondary from a safety and a cornerback, perspective that was really intriguing, and I really liked it, and I think I always go back to Todd Bowles when he first got to Tampa. He kind of, and I know he's got his history in Washington as well. He told everybody right up front, like, every defensive coordinator's dream is that the offense can shift, motion, do whatever they want, and the defense doesn't flinch, because we have the ability to cover them from any look, from any angle. It doesn't matter. And I think that's what Durante Jones is trying to gear at, is, no matter what the defense or what the offense does, we dictate terms. They don't dictate terms, and that goes back to what Mikey was talking about. Like, you got to be able to play both sides. That doesn't mean you're going to see Mikey Sainristil in the shade, do anything crazy like that. But, if you have guys that can do that to where, let's say it's week, whatever, December, end of December in Minnesota, and Justin Jefferson goes in motion, and you've got Kyler Murray trying to prove himself, or a young quarterback in JJ McCarthy trying to prove himself, and nobody moves, that quarterback's automatically thinking, all right, I got zone. And then you come out and you actually got a man, and you not only do you have man coverage, you got to have you blitz in front of it. And you have that advantage now to where you basically run your defense like an offense. And that's, again, very small sample size, very small portion of the playbook that we got to see. But you already see those kind of trends to where Durante Jones's intent is that we dictate terms to the offense. They're not dictating terms to us.
David Harrison is with us. Locked On Commanders podcast covers the team for them and on WUSA on the digital side. Scott Jackson, Anthony Armstrong with you here, part of the Bleav in Commanders and at Bleav Network, brought to you by FanDuel. All right, before we get too far down the road here, is this kicking battle legit? I mean, Drew Stevens, I heard he sounds like, one of these guys, that's like a slugger, like a James Wood hitting the ball, and during BP. He was a lot louder than Moody. It was obviously made more kicks. What did you see from that kicking battle? Was it as hype as some of these tweeters are pretending it was?
Yeah, I'm one of those tweeters. I will tell you right now. Listen,
I love it.
I didn't get a chance to ask Drew, but I feel like Drew would probably give the good answer of no, I just kicked that hard, because that's how hard I kick.
Right.
But he came out there, I'm like, yo, this kid is kicking to tell everybody, listen, this is my job. This is my. I mean, he kicked a 32-yarder, and that thing boomed. I was like, bro, you don't got to put that much leg into a 32-yarder or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Right. It's 17 games, man. Be careful.
Yeah. Then you get all the way back to 53. And both he and Jake Moody made the 53. But the thing about the difference is leg, right? The difference is leg. One of them crossed and landed on the ground. The other one crossed and hit the wall in the back of the bubble. Wow. You know what I mean? That's the difference. And then, like you said, the sound of it and all those things. The trick is always going to be accuracy. Matt Gay had a 60-yard leg. That's why he was brought in the first place. But the problem with Matt Gay, and I actually covered Matt Gay his rookie season in Tampa, and I remember being in the indoor practice facility there at One Buck Place, and same thing. I mean, he's just booming these balls, and you're like, man, did he just flatten every ball that he just kicked? Because the thing is, it just sounds loud as heck.
Right.
Consistency and accuracy was always his problem, and unfortunately it crept up in Washington as well. It crept up, and he won a Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams where he kicked a game-winning field goal against the Buccaneers in the postseason. Yet the very next season, he's looking for a job again because the consistency and accuracy just always escaped him. So, I think the Commanders want the leg. So Drew Stevens has the advantage there, and he showed very clearly that it's not even a close competition when it comes to leg ability, just distance. The question is going to come down to accuracy, right? And then specifically against the Miami Dolphins in joint practice, against the Baltimore Ravens joint practice, not a full rush, but as full of a rush as you can get in a practice environment, and then the preseason games. So I don't think this is such a runaway situation that by training camp, it'll just be Drew and nobody else. I think that the team is going to be smart. They're going to pace it out, and they're going to say, look, we need to make sure we get this right, not get this excited. But yeah, I mean, just from day one, it's only one day. But I'll tell you right now, from day one, I don't know, draft Drew Stevens in your fantasy formats,
I love it.
I didn't know we'd be talking about kickers and I mean, you hear about quarterbacks in their pro days, throw the ball to the top of the indoor facility to show off, and then now we got to talk kickers doing the same thing.
I'm telling you, it was impressive. And listen, so we talked to Drew Stevens after the rookie minicamp, and I know some of the interviews. My conversation with him, I didn't record it to put it on Twitter or anything like that, but he's got a little bit of an edge to him, not an attitude, but there's a little bit, and he did expect to get drafted. He thought he was getting drafted. He didn't think he was going to go UDFA. He was touched or whatever by the amount of interest in him, had multiple options, all that kind of stuff. But I think there's a little bit of edge to him to where some of these kickers get drafted. Jake Moody got drafted. So it's some of these guys get drafted, and for some reason I didn't, and I'm going to show everybody they made a mistake.
Not mad at that.
Now, can he get in the landing zone on the kickoff? So is he going to be giving touchbacks out all the time? That'd be the other
that's
going
to be the question as well.
Because
Tress ain't doing kickoffs.
Right.
Yeah.
He needs to have touch. He needs to have touch too. With the it's different than college football, obviously the NFL's version of it, but not as exciting. I mean, they've needed. Let's be honest. They've had such a kicking carousel. It'd be crazy not to at least bring in competition. You got to add some legs in the camp and figure out who you got and what you got. So I'm glad to see
I
that
just
at least
can't.
on
I
that.
just can't let our two most exciting players be the kicker and the punter. All right, that's all.
Yeah, well,
That's all.
yeah, right.
They could be great guys. They could be great guys. I ain't even
Yeah.
mad at them having a little swag, but you cannot be the most exciting players on the field for sure.
That's
Hey
awesome.
man, can't wait. Like when they re-signed Brandon Aubrey, and deservingly so. He deserved to get that bread. You know how many people was like about to go get Brandon Aubrey jerseys down there in Dallas? And I mean, shout out to him. Good congrats and everything. But like I drove by the Star and it had it up on there, Aubrey gear. I was like, look at that.
Oh my God, look at that.
Anthony knows I'm an Ohio State fan, and I remember Mike Nugent when he was, you know,
oh yeah, he was awesome.
Coming out of Ohio State, and he got drafted by the New York Jets. I can't remember if it was like the highest the Jets ever drafted a kicker or the highest a kicker out of Ohio State ever got. It was something like that. And I was like, I think I was like 15 years old. So I'm dating myself, but I was a teenager. I went and got me a Mike Nugent jersey. I had a New York Jets Mike Nugent jersey. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out. But yeah, I repped that kicker, man. He was good.
Well,
stuff.
as I say to Anthony, in this history of this franchise, I grew up in it. I mean, Redskin fans, Mark Mosley was the MVP of the league when they won their first Super Bowl. So people like expect a high level of place kicking here. And frankly, they just haven't had it in so long. You know, it's been such a turnstile. It started with Mosley, Low Miller, even though now when you look at the percentages, by the way, this kickers, it looks funny because the guys' percentages and the distances are crazy. The kickers now are so much at a next level, the best ones at least, than those days. But anyway, yeah, I think that's also part of it too. It's kind of a historical thing with the older fan base. Part of the kicking concerns all the time. We tend to look at that a lot. Hey, David at D Harrison 82 on the X, by the way, give him a follow there. Locked on Commanders. Great work. We appreciate your insights and hope to see you up there very soon. We get up to the OTAs.
Absolutely appreciate you guys. Thanks for the invite.
All right. For Anthony Armstrong, Scott Jackson's Bleav in Commanders, part of the Bleav Network. We're brought to you by FanDuel. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.